The bond between a player and their city can feel unbreakable. Fans wear their jerseys. Children dream of becoming them. Entire communities rally around their name. But sometimes, that bond shatters. Tonight, we explore the most painful breakups in NBA history. Real stories of loyalty tested, trust broken, and legacies changed forever. These are the moments that remind us that in basketball, nothing lasts forever. The year was 2004, and the Los Angeles Lakers had just lost something more than a championship. They had lost their way. For years, Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant had been unstoppable. 3 consecutive championships from 2000 to 2002. The most dominant center in basketball, paired with the most skilled shooting guard of his generation. They made it look easy, even when it wasn't. But beneath the surface, tension had been building for years. 2 alphas sharing one spotlight. 2 philosophies about how the game should be played. Shaq wanted to dominate in the post, to overpower opponents with his size and strength. Kobe wanted the ball in his hands, to create, to score, to control every moment. During the 2003 to 2004 season, that tension became impossible to ignore. Public comments, passive-aggressive interviews, teammates forced to choose sides. The chemistry that once carried them to greatness had turned toxic.
Then came June of 2004. The NBA Finals against the Detroit Pistons. The Lakers were favored, expected to reclaim their throne. Instead, they lost in 5 games. It wasn't just a loss. It was an embarrassment. The dynasty had crumbled in front of the entire world. Owner Jerry Buss faced an impossible choice. 2 superstars who could no longer coexist. 2 players who had given him 3 championships but now threatened to tear his franchise apart. He had to choose one. Shaq made it clear what he wanted. "I'm not going to take less money," he told reporters. After delivering 3 championships to Los Angeles, after being named Finals MVP 3 times, he believed he deserved to be compensated as the franchise player. He believed he had earned that loyalty. On July 14, 2004, the Lakers made their decision. Shaquille O'Neal was traded to the Miami Heat for Lamar Odom, Caron Butler, Brian Grant, and draft picks. The most dominant player of his era gone. Just like that. Shaq's response was immediate and emotional. He felt betrayed, discarded. 3 championships weren't enough to secure his place in Los Angeles? The organization had chosen Kobe, and Shaq would have to rebuild his legacy somewhere else.
He did exactly that. In 2006, Shaq won his 4th championship with Miami, proving he was still capable of leading a team to glory. Meanwhile, the Lakers struggled for years until Pau Gasol arrived in 2008. But the breakup left scars that never fully healed. In interviews years later, both Shaq and Kobe acknowledged the waste of potential. The championships they could have won together, if only they had found a way to coexist. The greatest what-if in modern NBA history, all because 2 legends couldn't share the throne. On the night of July 4, 2016, fireworks exploded across America. But in Oklahoma City, there was only silence. Kevin Durant had spent 9 seasons with the Thunder. 9 years of building something special in a small market that loved him unconditionally. He had been drafted by Seattle in 2007, then moved with the franchise to Oklahoma City in 2008. This was the team he grew up with. These were his brothers. In 2012, Durant and Russell Westbrook led the Thunder to the NBA Finals against the Miami Heat. They lost in 5 games, but they were young. The future belonged to them. Championships seemed inevitable. But years passed, and that championship never came. Close calls and heartbreaking losses. The basketball gods kept denying them what they had worked so hard to achieve.
Then came the 2016 Western Conference Finals. The Thunder faced the Golden State Warriors, a team that had just won 73 regular season games, breaking the all-time record. Oklahoma City dominated the series early, taking a 3-1 lead. They were 1 win away from returning to the finals, 1 win away from redemption. But the Warriors stormed back. Game 5 in Oakland, Game 6 in Oklahoma City, and finally, Game 7 back in Oakland. The Thunder collapsed. Durant and Westbrook watched their championship dreams slip away once again. The loss was devastating, but everyone in Oklahoma City believed they would run it back next season. They were so close. Next year would be different. Durant had other plans. On July 4, 2016, Kevin Durant announced he was signing with the Golden State Warriors, the same team that had just eliminated the Thunder, the same team that had broken their hearts, the 73-win super team that everyone accused of making the NBA boring. Durant was joining them. The reaction in Oklahoma City was immediate and intense. Jerseys burned in the streets. Fans who had loved him unconditionally now felt nothing but betrayal. The nickname Cupcake followed him everywhere. Signs calling him a traitor. The anger was visceral and personal.
Russell Westbrook's reaction was more measured publicly, but those close to the situation knew the friendship had fractured. These were two players who had grown up together in the league, who had dreamed of winning championships together. Now, Durant was chasing rings with the team that had just beaten them. On February 11, 2017, Kevin Durant returned to Oklahoma City for the first time as a member of the Warriors. The atmosphere inside Chesapeake Energy Arena was electric with anger. Boos rained down every time Durant touched the ball. MVP chants for Westbrook filled the building whenever he made a play. The pain was still fresh, the wound still open. Durant went on to win 2 championships with Golden State in 2017 and 2018, earning Finals MVP both times. He had the rings he wanted, the validation he sought. But in Oklahoma City, forgiveness never came. Even years later, even after Durant left Golden State for Brooklyn, the betrayal still stung. Some fans understand it now. Some appreciate what he gave them during those 9 years. But most remember the summer of 2016, when their hero abandoned them for the team that had just broken their hearts. In Oklahoma City, Kevin Durant will always be the one who got away, the one who chose an easier path, the one who left them behind. July 8, 2010, the night that changed everything.
LeBron James had been Cleveland's chosen one since he was 18 years old. Drafted first overall in 2003 by his hometown team, he carried the weight of an entire city on his shoulders. Cleveland hadn't won a major sports championship since 1964. The Browns struggled, the Indians came close, but never broke through. LeBron was supposed to be different. He was supposed to be the one who finally brought a championship home. For 7 seasons, he gave Cleveland everything he had. He won 2 MVP awards in 2009 and 2010, becoming one of the youngest players ever to receive that honor. He dragged mediocre rosters to the playoffs year after year through sheer force of will. In 2007, at just 22 years old, he carried the Cavaliers to the NBA Finals against the San Antonio Spurs. They were swept, but simply getting there felt like a miracle. But the championship never came.
Management surrounded him with role players but never found that second superstar he needed. The supporting cast changed constantly, but the results remained frustratingly similar. Close, but not close enough. By the summer of 2010, LeBron was a free agent, and the basketball world held its breath. Would he stay in Cleveland and continue fighting for that elusive championship? Or would he leave, chase rings elsewhere, and break the hearts of millions? The answer came in the most controversial way possible. ESPN aired a special called The Decision on July 8, 2010. LeBron sat in a chair, cameras surrounding him, and announced his future to the world. Fans in Cleveland watched nervously, desperately hoping he would stay, hoping 7 years of loyalty meant something, hoping he wouldn't abandon them. Then came the words that shattered a city. I'm going to take my talents to South Beach, the Miami Heat. LeBron was joining Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh to form a super team. He was leaving Cleveland, leaving his home, leaving the fans who had loved him since he was a teenager. The reaction was immediate and explosive. Cavaliers owner Dan Gilbert released a letter to fans, written in Comic Sans font, calling LeBron's decision cowardly and promising that Cleveland would win a championship before LeBron ever would. Jerseys burned across the city. Fans who had witness posters in their homes tore them down in anger. The betrayal felt personal, intimate, devastating. On December 2, 2010, LeBron returned to Cleveland for the first time as a member of the Heat. Security concerns ran high. Police presence increased throughout downtown Cleveland. The atmosphere inside Quicken Loans Arena was hostile in a way rarely seen in professional sports. Boos thundered every time LeBron touched the ball. Signs calling him a traitor filled the stands. The hatred was palpable, overwhelming. For 4 years, that wound festered. LeBron won 2 championships with Miami in 2012 and 2013, validating his decision on the court. But in Cleveland, the pain never subsided. He was the hometown hero who abandoned them when they needed him most, the chosen one who chose somewhere else. Then, in the summer of 2014, everything changed. LeBron announced he was returning to Cleveland, not through a television special, but through a heartfelt letter in Sports Illustrated. He was coming home to finish what he started, to deliver the championship he had promised. 4 years later, the wound finally healed, but the scar remained. The decision changed how free agency announcements are perceived forever. Players now understand that how you leave matters just as much as where you go. LeBron learned that lesson the hard way, in front of millions, as an entire city turned against him. Cleveland eventually forgave him. In 2016, he delivered that championship, ending 52 years of misery. But the summer of 2010 will never be forgotten. The night LeBron took his talents to South Beach and left Cleveland in ruins. Some breakups happen with screaming and tears. Others happen in silence. The end of Kawhi Leonard and the San Antonio Spurs was the latter. Kawhi Leonard was the 15th pick in the 2011 draft, traded to San Antonio on draft night from the Indiana Pacers. He arrived as a defensive specialist with limited offensive skills. The Spurs saw something more. They saw potential, patience, and a work ethic that matched their organizational culture. By 2014, Kawhi had blossomed into something special. The Spurs won the championship that year, defeating the Miami Heat in 5 games. Kawhi was named Finals MVP, a remarkable achievement for a player in just his 3rd season. He had become the heir apparent to Tim Duncan, the future of the franchise. The following seasons only reinforced that belief. Kawhi became a two-time Defensive Player of the Year in 2015 and 2016. His offensive game expanded dramatically, averaging over 25 points per game. He was a superstar, quiet and methodical, perfectly suited to the Spurs system. Then, during the 2016 playoff series against the Golden State Warriors, something changed. Zaza Pachulia closed out on Kawhi on a three-point attempt in Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals. Kawhi landed on Pachulia's foot, rolling his ankle severely. He tried to return, but clearly wasn't right. The Spurs lost that series, and questions about the injury began to emerge.
The 2017 to 2018 season is when everything fell apart. Kawhi's quad injury, originally diagnosed as a quadriceps tendinopathy, kept him out of game after game. The Spurs medical staff believed he could play through it. Kawhi and his personal medical team disagreed. The disconnect grew wider with each passing week. Kawhi played only 9 games during the entire 2017 to 2018 season. 9 games for a franchise that had built everything around him. 9 games while the team struggled to maintain playoff positioning. 9 games while speculation swirled about what was really happening. In March of 2018, Tony Parker, Kawhi's teammate and a Spurs legend, made comments comparing his own quad injury to Kawhi's. "My injury was 100 times worse than Kawhi's," Parker told reporters. The comments, whether intended to motivate or merely factual, widened the growing divide between Kawhi and the organization. The silence from Kawhi became deafening. He stopped communicating with teammates. He stopped attending games regularly. He rehabbed in New York, away from the team, away from San Antonio. Greg Popovich, the legendary coach who had developed him, flew to San Diego to meet with Kawhi and his camp. The meeting went nowhere. Trust had broken down completely. By the summer of 2018, reports confirmed what everyone suspected. Kawhi wanted out. He wanted a trade, preferably to Los Angeles. The relationship between one of the NBA's model franchises and their superstar had deteriorated beyond repair, and nobody outside the organization truly understood why.
On July 18, 2018, the Spurs traded Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green to the Toronto Raptors for DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and a protected first-round pick. The trade shocked the basketball world. The Spurs, known for stability and loyalty, had lost their franchise player in the most confusing circumstances imaginable. Kawhi never spoke publicly about what truly happened. No tell-all interview, no social media post explaining his side. Just silence. He went to Toronto, won a championship in his only season there, then left for the Los Angeles Clippers in free agency. He got everything he wanted. But in San Antonio, questions remain. What really happened between Kawhi and the Spurs? Was it the injury mismanagement? Was it something deeper, something personal that will never be revealed? Spurs fans who had embraced him as the next great legend were left confused and hurt. The most painful breakups are often the ones you never fully understand. The ones that end not with explanations, but with silence. Kawhi Leonard and the San Antonio Spurs ended exactly that way, leaving an entire city wondering what went wrong and why the future they had dreamed of disappeared without warning. Vince Carter gave Toronto basketball everything. Then, in the end, it seemed like he gave them nothing at all. When Carter arrived in Toronto in 1998, traded on draft night from the Golden State Warriors, basketball in Canada was still finding its footing. The Raptors had only existed since 1995, and the sport struggled to compete with hockey for the nation's attention. Then came the 2000 Slam Dunk Contest. Vince Carter put on a performance that transcended basketball. The elbow in the rim, the between-the-legs dunk, the 360-degree windmill. He didn't just win the contest.
He redefined what was possible, what the human body could achieve at the rim. Overnight, Vinsanity swept across Toronto and beyond. Carter became the face of basketball in Canada, the player who made the sport matter north of the border. For the next few seasons, Carter electrified Toronto. He made highlight reels every night. He filled the arena. Children across Canada wore his jersey and practiced his dunks in driveways. He led the Raptors to the playoffs multiple times, including a run to the Eastern Conference semifinals in 2000, where they pushed the Philadelphia 76ers to 7 games. But by 2004, the relationship had soured. Injuries plagued Carter during the 2000 to 2004 season. Fans and media questioned his toughness, his commitment to playing through pain. Whispers began that Carter wasn't giving full effort, that he was mentally checked out.
Those whispers became shouts when reports emerged that Carter had allegedly admitted to giving less than his best. Even more damaging were accusations that he had tipped off opponents about Toronto's plays during games. The trust between Carter and the organization, between Carter and the fans, shattered completely. On December 17, 2004, the Raptors traded Vince Carter to the New Jersey Nets for Alonzo Mourning, Eric Williams, Aaron Williams, and 2 first-round draft picks. The trade appeared reasonable on paper, but it quickly became a disaster. Alonzo Mourning refused to report to Toronto. He had no interest in playing for the Raptors and forced a buyout. Toronto essentially gave away their franchise player and received almost nothing in return. Meanwhile, Carter immediately flourished in New Jersey, averaging 27.7 points per game and leading the Nets to the playoffs. The betrayal felt by Toronto fans was intense and lasting. Carter had been their hero, the player who put Canadian basketball on the map. Now he was thriving elsewhere, while Toronto rebuilt from the ruins. The accusations of reduced effort made it personal. Had he quit on them? Had he tanked his value to force his way out? For over a decade, Vince Carter was booed mercilessly every time he returned to Toronto. The hostility never fully faded, even as Carter's career continued through multiple teams and he became a respected veteran. Some wounds take years to heal, if they heal at all.
In 2014, during Carter's first season with the Memphis Grizzlies, something shifted. A video tribute played before the game in Toronto, highlighting Carter's contributions to basketball in Canada. The crowd cheered. After 10 years, forgiveness was finally possible. But the damage was done. An entire generation of Toronto fans grew up hating the player who had once been their idol. The messiest divorce in Raptors history left scars on both sides. Carter admitted years later that he handled the situation poorly, that he should have communicated better, that he regretted how everything ended. Toronto eventually recovered. They built a new identity, found new stars, and in 2019 won their first championship. But they did it without Vince Carter, without the man who had started it all. The what-ifs lingered. What if Carter had stayed? What if the relationship hadn't deteriorated? What if insanity had been enough? Sometimes the players who give you the most are also the ones who hurt you the deepest. Vince Carter gave Toronto basketball relevance, excitement, and hope. But when he left, he took something with him that could never be fully recovered: trust. On June 19, 2016, Kyrie Irving hit the biggest shot in Cleveland sports history. A three-pointer over Stephen Curry with less than a minute remaining in Game 7 of the NBA Finals. The shot that delivered Cleveland's first championship in 52 years. The shot that made LeBron James cry. The shot that validated everything.
14 months later, Kyrie wanted out. The partnership between LeBron James and Kyrie Irving had seemed perfect. LeBron, the veteran leader, the best player in the world. Kyrie, the supremely talented young guard with handles that defied physics. Together, they had overcome a 3-1 deficit against the Golden State Warriors to win the championship. They had achieved the impossible. But beneath the celebration, tension brewed. Kyrie wanted more. He wanted to be the leader of a team, not the sidekick. He wanted his own spotlight, his own credit,
his own legacy. Playing alongside LeBron meant always being second, always being LeBron's point guard, instead of Kyrie Irving, superstar. In July of 2017, just 1 year after delivering a championship, Kyrie requested a trade. The news shocked the basketball world. Why would someone leave the best player in the world? Why would someone break up a championship team? Why would someone walk away from guaranteed finals appearances? Reports indicated Kyrie wanted to escape LeBron's shadow. He provided the Cavaliers with a list of preferred destinations. Boston wasn't on that list, but that's where he ended up. On August 22, 2017, the Cavaliers traded Kyrie Irving to the Boston Celtics for Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, Ante Zizic, and Brooklyn's 2018 first-round pick. The trade sent shockwaves through the league for multiple reasons.
Isaiah Thomas had been the heart and soul of Boston the previous season. He averaged 28.9 points per game and finished 5th in MVP voting. More remarkably, he played through unimaginable grief after his sister China died in a car accident during the playoffs. He scored 29 points in his first game back, tears streaming down his face, giving everything he had for Boston. Now, just months later, Boston had traded him. The business side of basketball had revealed itself in the cruelest way. Loyalty, heart, and sacrifice weren't enough. The Celtics had a chance to acquire a younger, healthier star, and they took it without hesitation. For Cleveland, the pain was different, but equally sharp. Kyrie, the player they had drafted with the first overall pick in 2011, the player who had hit the shot that delivered their championship, wanted out. He didn't want to play with LeBron anymore. He didn't want to be part of what they were building. The friendship between Kyrie and LeBron fractured publicly. Their social media unfollows made headlines. Subtle comments and interviews hinted at deeper issues. What had once been a beautiful basketball partnership had turned awkward and distant. Cleveland fans felt betrayed for the second time in less than a decade. First, LeBron left in 2010. Then he came back and delivered the championship they had dreamed of.
Now, just 1 year later, Kyrie was leaving. The window was closing again, and this time, it felt permanent. The Cavaliers made one more finals appearance in 2018 without Kyrie, but they were swept by Golden State. LeBron left for Los Angeles that summer. The championship era ended abruptly, just 2 years after it had reached its peak. Kyrie's time in Boston was complicated, talented but injury-plagued, promising but ultimately disappointing. He left Boston after 2 seasons for Brooklyn, continuing his pattern of restless movement. Looking back, the 2016 championship feels bittersweet in Cleveland. They won, they celebrated, they achieved the impossible. But the team that won it all lasted just 1 more season before Kyrie decided it wasn't enough. The partnership that delivered Cleveland's greatest sports moment couldn't survive success. Sometimes winning isn't enough to keep people together. Sometimes even championships can't prevent the inevitable drift, the desire for something different, the belief that greatness somewhere else is better than greatness where you are. Kyrie Irving and Cleveland learned that lesson the hard way, 1 year after celebrating together on top of the basketball world.
If anyone deserved lifetime loyalty from a franchise, it was Dwayne Wade. Drafted 5th overall in 2003, Wade became Miami's first true superstar. In 2006, at just 24 years old, he carried the Heat to their first championship, averaging 34.7 points per game in the finals against the Dallas Mavericks. He was Finals MVP, the best player on the court, the hero Miami had been waiting for. For years, Wade was Miami. He played through injuries that would have sidelined lesser players. He gave the city everything he had, night after night, leaving pieces of himself on the court. He was Flash, the lightning-quick guard who could score from anywhere, defend anyone, and deliver in the biggest moments. In 2010, Wade made a sacrifice that changed his legacy. When LeBron James and Chris Bosh decided to team up,
Wade could have gone elsewhere and been the unquestioned leader. Instead, he recruited them to Miami, took a pay cut to make the financial arrangement work, and accepted a slightly reduced role for the good of the team. The decision led to 2 more championships in 2012 and 2013. Wade was Finals MVP in 2006, and a critical piece of 2 more titles. 3 championships for the franchise, all with Wade as a central figure. He had given Miami everything a player could give. But by 2016, the relationship had become complicated. Wade was 34 years old. His body, worn down by years of playing through pain, wasn't the same. The Heat had salary cap concerns and younger players to pay. When Wade's contract expired in the summer of 2016, he expected the organization to reward his loyalty, his sacrifices, his championships.
Contract negotiations began. Wade wanted a long-term deal that reflected everything he had given Miami. The Heat, led by team president Pat Riley, hesitated. They offered less money and shorter terms than Wade felt he deserved. The gap between what Wade wanted and what Miami was willing to offer widened with each passing day. On July 6, 2016, the unthinkable happened. Dwayne Wade signed with the Chicago Bulls, his hometown team, for 2 years and $47 million. He was leaving Miami, the only franchise he had ever known, the city where he had won 3 championships. The breakup was mutual heartbreak. Wade didn't want to leave, but he felt disrespected by the contract offers. Miami didn't want to lose him, but they couldn't justify paying an aging star the money he demanded. Both sides handled it professionally, without public feuds or angry statements. But beneath the surface, the pain was real. Pat Riley, known for his loyalty to championship players, later admitted disappointment with how things ended. He believed Wade's agent had pushed him toward Chicago, that the relationship between the organization and Wade had been damaged by outside influences. When Wade returned to Miami for the first time as a member of the Bulls on November 10, 2016, the reception was warm but bittersweet. Fans gave him a standing ovation during a video tribute. They cheered for him during introductions. They appreciated everything he had done for the franchise. But he was wearing the wrong jersey, playing for the opposition, no longer theirs.
Wade played 1 season in Chicago, then a brief stint with Cleveland, before returning to Miami in February of 2018. The prodigal son came home, and the city welcomed him with open arms. He finished his career in Miami, retiring after the 2018 to 2019 season. But something fundamental had changed. The trust between Wade and the organization had been broken in the summer of 2016. The business side of basketball had overshadowed years of loyalty and sacrifice. Wade got his money from Chicago, and Miami avoided a potentially bad long-term contract. Both sides made the logical decision. Yet, logic doesn't heal emotional wounds. Dwayne Wade gave Miami everything, including taking pay cuts to build championship teams. When he finally asked the organization to give back, they hesitated. The 3 championships he delivered weren't enough to secure the contract he felt he had earned. In the end, Wade returned to Miami and retired there. The city honored him, retired his jersey, and celebrated his legacy. But fans will always wonder what might have been different if the summer of 2016 had gone another way. If Miami had valued loyalty over financial flexibility. If Wade had accepted less money to stay. If the greatest player in franchise history had never worn another team's uniform.
Some breakups happen even when both sides still love each other. Sometimes the business of basketball forces decisions that nobody truly wants to make. Dwayne Wade and the Miami Heat proved that even 13 years of loyalty, 3 championships, and mutual respect aren't always enough to prevent heartbreak. Chris Paul arrived in Los Angeles in December of 2011, and everything changed for the Clippers. For decades, the Clippers had been the punchline of the NBA. They played in the same city as the Lakers, but existed in their shadow. They lost more than they won. They drafted poorly, managed terribly, and disappointed consistently. They were basketball's lovable losers, except nobody really loved them. Chris Paul changed that narrative overnight. Alongside Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan, he transformed the Clippers into Lob City, one of the most exciting teams in basketball. Alley-oops became the signature play. Wins piled up. Playoff appearances became expected rather than hoped for. For the first time in franchise history, people chose Clippers tickets over Lakers tickets. From 2012 to 2017, Chris Paul was the engine that made everything run. He averaged over 18 points and 10 assists per game during his tenure. He was a first-team All-NBA selection 4 times. He made the Clippers relevant, respected, and genuinely competitive. But there was always one problem. They couldn't break through in the playoffs. The regular season belonged to the Clippers. They won 50 or more games 5 times during Paul's 6 seasons. They were appointment television, must-see basketball. But when the playoffs arrived, something always went wrong. Injuries, collapses, bad luck, questionable officiating. The Clippers found new ways to break their fans' hearts every spring. The most painful collapse came in 2015 against the Houston Rockets in the Western Conference semifinals. The Clippers led the series 3-1. They were 1 win away from the conference finals, 1 win away from potentially competing for a championship. Then, everything fell apart. They lost Game 5 in Houston. They returned home for Game 6 and blew a 19-point lead in the final 4 minutes, losing in devastating fashion. Game 7 in Houston was anticlimactic. The Clippers were emotionally broken, and the Rockets advanced. That loss haunted the franchise. Questions emerged about their mental toughness, their ability to close out series, their championship viability. Chris Paul took the blame, fairly or not, for failing to deliver when it mattered most. The following seasons brought more disappointment. Blake Griffin's injuries mounted, the supporting cast aged, the championship window that had seemed so wide in 2015 appeared to be closing rapidly. In June of 2017, Chris Paul made a decision. He opted into the final year of his contract, worth $24.2 million, then requested a trade. After 6 seasons of trying to make it work with the Clippers, he wanted a fresh start elsewhere. On June 28, 2017, the Clippers traded Chris Paul to the Houston Rockets for Patrick Beverley, Lou Williams, Sam Decker, Montrezl Harrell, Darun Hilliard, DeAndre Liggins, Kyle Wiltjer, a cash consideration, a protected first-round pick, and the right to swap second-round picks. It was one of the most complicated trades in recent NBA history, involving 8 players and multiple draft considerations. For Clippers fans, the trade represented the end of an era and the acknowledgement of failure. Chris Paul had given them 6 years of exciting basketball, but he was leaving without ever reaching the conference finals. All those regular season wins, all those highlight reel plays, all those playoff appearances had led to nothing. Paul joined James Harden in Houston and immediately found success. In 2018, the Rockets pushed the Golden State Warriors to 7 games in the Western Conference Finals, coming within 1 win of the NBA Finals. But Paul suffered a hamstring injury late in Game 5 and missed the final 2 games. The Rockets lost both without him. Once again, Chris Paul came close, but didn't break through.
The Clippers rebuilt after Paul left. They bottomed out for 1 season, then made an improbable playoff appearance in 2019 before trading for Kawhi Leonard and Paul George that summer. In 2021, they finally reached the Western Conference Finals for the first time in franchise history, doing it without Chris Paul. The irony was not lost on anyone. The Clippers achieved their greatest playoff success after their best point guard left. Chris Paul moved on to Phoenix in 2020 and finally reached the finals in 2021, though the Suns lost to Milwaukee in 6 games. Both the Clippers and Chris Paul found greater playoff success apart than they ever did together. Sometimes the chemistry that works during the regular season doesn't translate to championship contention. Sometimes teams need to blow up a core that looks good on paper, but can't deliver when it matters most. Chris Paul gave the Clippers 6 years of relevance, excitement, and hope. He made them matter in a city that had always belonged to the Lakers. But he couldn't give them the one thing they wanted most: a deep playoff run. When he left, it felt like the acknowledgement of mutual failure. The Clippers couldn't build a championship team around him, and he couldn't carry them to where they wanted to go.
The Lob City era was fun while it lasted. Highlight reels, exciting games, and regular season success. But in the NBA, regular season excellence without playoff success is just pretty failure. Chris Paul and the Clippers learned that lesson over 6 frustrating seasons, until finally they both decided it was time to try something new somewhere else without each other. The image is burned into the memory of every basketball fan who saw it. Paul George lying on the court during a Team USA scrimmage on August 1, 2014. His right leg bent at an unnatural angle below the knee, a compound fracture that made even professional athletes turn away. It was supposed to be a simple scrimmage in Las Vegas, preparation for the FIBA World Cup. Instead, it became the moment that changed Paul George's career and his relationship with the Indiana Pacers. Before the injury, Paul George was everything to Indiana. Drafted 10th overall in 2010, he developed into a superstar in a small market that desperately needed one. He was a 2-time All-Star by 2014. He had finished 3rd in MVP voting during the 2012 to 2013 season. He led the Pacers to back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals in 2013 and 2014. The Pacers built their identity around George: tough defense, physical basketball, blue-collar mentality matching their Indiana roots. George was the face of the franchise, the player who could lead them to a championship. The future looked limitless.
Then came the injury. Doctors initially worried George might never play again. The fracture was severe, the road to recovery uncertain. But George worked tirelessly through rehabilitation, determined to return to form. He missed the entire 2014 to 2015 season. When he returned in 2015 to 2016, he wasn't quite the same player initially. But by 2016 to 2017, George had fought his way back to all-star form, averaging 23.7 points per game. Indiana fans had supported him through everything, through the gruesome injury, through the long rehabilitation, through the slow return to form. They wore his jersey, chanted his name, and believed he would lead them back to championship contention. After what they had been through together, the bond felt unbreakable. Then, in June of 2017, reports emerged that changed everything. Paul George had informed the Pacers that he planned to leave in free agency the following summer when his contract expired. Even worse, he had made it clear he intended to sign with the Los Angeles Lakers. The Pacers faced an impossible situation. They could keep George for one more season and lose him for nothing in free agency. Or they could trade him immediately and at least receive something in return. But George's public declaration that he would sign with the Lakers tanked his trade value. Teams weren't willing to give up significant assets for a one-year rental who had already announced his future plans. On June 30th, 2017, the Pacers traded Paul George to the Oklahoma City Thunder for Victor Oladipo and Domas Sabonis. At the time, the trade was widely criticized. Oladipo had been inconsistent in Orlando and underwhelming in his one season with the Thunder. Sabonis was a young player with potential but no proven track record. Many analysts believed Indiana had received far less than George's value. For Pacers fans, the betrayal cut deep. They had supported George through the worst injury of his career. They had watched him suffer, rehabilitate, and fight his way back. They had never stopped believing in him.
And this was how he repaid them? By announcing he was leaving for Los Angeles, destroying his trade value, and forcing the team to accept a seemingly weak return? The anger was real and personal. Paul George had been their hero, their franchise player, their hope for the future. Now he was abandoning them for the bright lights of Los Angeles. But then something unexpected happened. Victor Oladipo became a star. During the 2017 to 2018 season, Oladipo transformed into an all-star, averaging 23.1 points per game and winning Most Improved Player. He led Indiana to the playoffs and gave the franchise a new identity. Sabonis developed into a skilled big man who would eventually become an all-star himself.
The trade that everyone had criticized as a disaster turned into one of the best moves in recent Pacers history. Indiana moved on successfully, finding new stars and new hope. Meanwhile, Paul George spent one season in Oklahoma City alongside Russell Westbrook. They were eliminated in the first round of the playoffs by the Utah Jazz. Then, in the summer of 2018, George made a decision that added another layer to the story. He didn't sign with the Lakers as he had promised. Instead, he re-signed with the Thunder on a 4-year contract worth $137 million. A year later, he requested a trade and was sent to the Los Angeles Clippers, not the Lakers. Everything he had told the Pacers about wanting to play for the Lakers turned out to be either a lie or a change of heart. For Pacers fans, the entire saga felt surreal. George had forced his way out by saying he wanted to be a Laker. The Pacers had to trade him for less value because of his declaration. Then George didn't even end up with the Lakers. He went to Oklahoma City, then to the Clippers. Meanwhile, Indiana thrived with the players they received in return.
The breakup that seemed disastrous for Indiana turned into a blessing. The player who seemed destined for Los Angeles ended up somewhere else. The entire narrative flipped in ways nobody could have predicted. Paul George gave Indiana 7 seasons of high-level basketball and 2 deep playoff runs. But when he decided to leave, he did it in a way that damaged the franchise's ability to receive fair value in return. By announcing his intentions publicly, he forced Indiana's hand and limited their options. Some Pacers fans have forgiven him. Time has a way of healing wounds, especially when the trade works out well for your team. But others remember the summer of 2017, when their franchise player, the one they had supported through a devastating injury, told the world he was leaving and destroyed his trade value in the process. The irony is that both sides ended up fine. Indiana found new stars, George found success elsewhere. But the way it happened, the public declaration, the forced trade, the broken promises, left scars that never fully disappeared. Some breakups are quick and painful, like ripping off a bandage. Others drag on for months, festering and uncomfortable, making everyone involved miserable. Dwight Howard's departure from the Orlando Magic was the latter.
Howard arrived in Orlando as the first overall pick in the 2004 draft, a teenager with superhuman athleticism and a permanent smile. He became Superman, literally wearing a Superman cape during the 2008 Slam Dunk Contest. He was Orlando's franchise player, their future, their hope. By 2009, Howard had become the most dominant defensive player in basketball. He won his first Defensive Player of the Year award that season, the first of 3 consecutive wins from 2009 to 2011. He led the Magic to the NBA Finals against the Lakers, though they lost in 5 games. But simply reaching the finals felt like a beginning, not an ending. For the next 2 seasons, Howard remained dominant individually, but the Magic struggled to surround him with enough talent. They made the playoffs, but couldn't recapture that finals magic. By 2011, Howard was approaching free agency, and speculation about his future began. The 2011 to 2012 season became a nightmare for everyone involved. Howard's relationship with the organization deteriorated publicly. He wanted the Magic to trade for better players. He wanted head coach Stan Van Gundy fired. He demanded changes, or else he would leave in free agency.
The Magic tried to accommodate him. They explored trades. They discussed organizational changes, but nothing satisfied Howard. He would request a trade, then change his mind. He would commit to Orlando, then express doubts publicly. The back and forth became exhausting for fans, teammates, and the organization.
The lowest point came in March of 2012. Stan Van Gundy told reporters that he had been informed Howard wanted him fired. Minutes later, Howard and Van Gundy had an awkward encounter in the hallway, captured on camera, where Howard denied the reports while standing next to the coach he allegedly wanted gone. The image of Howard putting his arm around Van Gundy, smiling uncomfortably while Van Gundy looked miserable, became symbolic of the entire dysfunctional situation. Nothing was working. Nobody was happy. The relationship had become toxic in the most public way possible. Howard eventually agreed to opt in for the 2012 to 2013 season, but by then, everyone knew it was over. The Magic had to trade him while they still could. On August 10, 2012, they executed a massive 4-team trade that sent Howard to the Los Angeles Lakers. Orlando received Aaron Aflalo, Al Harrington, Nikola Vucevic, Mo Harkless, Josh McRoberts, and multiple draft picks. On paper, it looked like reasonable value. In reality, it marked the end of Orlando's competitive era. They wouldn't make the playoffs again until 2020. For Magic fans, the entire saga left them exhausted and bitter. Howard had been their Superman, the player who carried them to the finals, the dominant center in an era where dominant centers had become rare. But instead of handling his departure professionally, he had turned it into a months-long circus that embarrassed everyone involved.
The public indecision, the conflicting statements, the obvious desire to leave while simultaneously claiming loyalty, the manipulation of coaches and management, the awkward encounters caught on camera. It was a masterclass in how not to handle a breakup. Howard's career never reached the same heights after leaving Orlando. His one season with the Lakers was disappointing and drama-filled. He bounced between Houston, Atlanta, Charlotte, Washington, and eventually back to the Lakers in 2019. But he was never again a franchise centerpiece. The Superman cape came off, and underneath was just a talented player who'd worn out his welcome everywhere he went. Orlando moved on, rebuilding around new players, eventually finding success again years later. But the Dwight Howard era, which had started with so much promise, ended in the messiest, most uncomfortable way imaginable. Some relationships end because of disagreements about the future. Some end because circumstances force difficult decisions. Dwight Howard and the Orlando Magic ended because of indecision, public dysfunction, and a superstar who couldn't make up his mind until he had exhausted everyone around him.
The 2011 to 2012 season should have been a competitive year for a team with the best defensive player in basketball. Instead, it became a soap opera that distracted from everything else. By the time Howard finally left, Magic fans weren't sad. They were relieved. Their relationship had become so exhausting that ending it, even painfully, felt better than continuing. Not all breakups involve a superstar abandoning a franchise. Sometimes the franchise breaks the heart instead. Isaiah Thomas was the 60th and final pick of the 2011 draft, the last player selected, the afterthought. Throughout his career, he had used that chip on his shoulder as motivation. At 5 feet 9 inches tall, he was too short, they said, too small to succeed in a league of giants. He proved them wrong in Sacramento. He proved them wrong in Phoenix. And when he arrived in Boston midway through the 2014 to 2015 season, he proved them wrong again. By 2015 to 2016, Thomas had become an all-star in Boston. The following season, 2016 to 2017, he transformed into something special.
He averaged 28.9 points per game, finished 5th in MVP voting, and led the Celtics to the #1 seed in the Eastern Conference.
Boston embraced him completely. He was the little guy competing against giants and winning. He was king of the fourth, taking over games in crunch time. He was the heart and soul of a franchise rebuilding its identity. Celtics fans loved him unconditionally. Then came April 15th, 2017. Thomas's sister, China, died in a car accident. The tragedy devastated him. He considered not playing in the playoffs, taking time to grieve, stepping away from basketball while he processed the loss. Instead, he played. He poured his grief into the game, scoring 29 points in his first game back against the Chicago Bulls. Tears streamed down his face during the national anthem. His pain was visible, raw, and heartbreaking, but he played anyway, carrying Boston through the playoffs while dealing with unimaginable personal loss. During the Eastern Conference Finals against the Cleveland Cavaliers, Thomas suffered a hip injury. He tried to play through it, gutting out performances despite clear pain. The Celtics lost the series in 5 games, and Thomas's hip injury worsened. He needed time to recover, possibly surgery. Boston management faced a decision that summer. Isaiah Thomas had given them everything, including playing through his sister's death and a worsening hip injury. He had transformed from a cast-off into an MVP candidate. He had made the Celtics relevant again. The city loved him.
But the Cleveland Cavaliers were offering a trade. Kyrie Irving, a younger, taller, healthier point guard with championship experience, wanted out of Cleveland. Boston could acquire him, but only by including Isaiah Thomas in the deal. On August 22, 2017, just 4 months after Thomas played through his sister's death for the Celtics, Boston traded him to Cleveland along with Jay Crowder, Ante Zizic, and Brooklyn's 2018 first-round pick for Kyrie Irving. The business decision made sense. Irving was younger and healthier. Thomas's hip injury was more serious than initially believed. The Celtics were positioning themselves for long-term success. On paper, the logic was sound, but the optics were terrible. Thomas had given Boston everything, including playing through grief and injury. He had sacrificed his body for the team. 4 months later, they traded him like any other asset. The loyalty he shown them wasn't reciprocated. Thomas's response on social media captured the pain. He posted about loyalty in the NBA, about how players are expected to be loyal to organizations while organizations make purely business decisions. The hurt was evident in every word. His hip injury turned out to be worse than anyone realized. He required surgery and missed the first half of the 2017 to 2018 season. When he finally returned for Cleveland, he wasn't the same player. The explosiveness was gone. The scoring ability diminished. The hip injury had robbed him of the qualities that made him special.
Cleveland traded him to the Lakers at the deadline. He bounced between Denver, Washington, New Orleans, and Dallas over the following years, never recapturing his all-star form. The 5'9" underdog, who had defied expectations and become an MVP candidate, was reduced to a journeyman fighting for roster spots. For Boston, the trade worked perfectly from a basketball perspective. Kyrie Irving led them to success, even though he eventually left in free agency. They drafted Jason Tatum with the Brooklyn pick they received. The team improved and positioned itself as a contender. But Isaiah Thomas's story became a cautionary tale about loyalty in professional sports. He had done everything right. He played through grief. He played through injury. He gave the organization and the city everything he had. And when they had a chance to acquire a better player, they traded him without hesitation. Boston fans still love Isaiah Thomas. When he returns to TD Garden, they cheer for him. They remember what he gave them, what he meant to the franchise during those years. But they also know that the organization made the logical decision, even if it broke his heart.
The trade haunts conversations about player loyalty and organizational loyalty. When players demand trades or leave in free agency, teams and fans accuse them of disloyalty. But when teams trade beloved players for better assets, it's dismissed as just business. Isaiah Thomas played through his sister's death for the Boston Celtics. 4 months later, they traded him to Cleveland. The message was clear. In the NBA, loyalty only matters until a better option becomes available. Thomas learned that lesson painfully, publicly, and permanently. His career never recovered from the hip injury. The explosive scorer who averaged nearly 29 points per game was gone forever, replaced by a diminished version struggling to find consistent playing time. The what-ifs linger. What if he had sat out the playoffs to heal properly? What if Boston had kept him and managed his recovery? What if loyalty had mattered more than opportunity? We'll never know. But we do know that Isaiah Thomas gave the Celtics everything, and in return, they gave him a painful reminder that basketball is a business, and business doesn't care about grief, loyalty, or sacrifice. DeMar DeRozan bled for Toronto. He said it himself, repeatedly. He wanted to retire there. He wanted to bring a championship to Canada. He wanted to be the loyal superstar who never abandoned his city, even when bigger markets came calling. Toronto believed him.
DeRozan arrived in Toronto as the 9th overall pick in the 2009 draft. For the first few years, he was just another young player trying to find his way. But gradually, alongside Kyle Lowry, he transformed into something more. An all-star, a franchise cornerstone, the best player the Raptors had developed since Vince Carter. From 2013 to 2018, DeRozan and Lowry led Toronto to 5 consecutive playoff appearances. They were the Trash Bros, a nickname they embraced, despite its origin as an insult about their playoff struggles. They were the heart of the franchise, the duo that made Toronto consistently competitive. DeRozan became a 4-time All-Star. He averaged over 20 points per game for 6 consecutive seasons. He developed an old-school mid-range game in an era of three-point shooting. He gave Toronto everything, including turning down more money from other teams to stay loyal to Canada. But there was always one problem: LeBron James. Year after year, the Raptors ran into LeBron in the playoffs. Year after year, LeBron eliminated them. In 2016, the conference finals. In 2017, the second round. In 2018, the second round again, with LeBron sweeping them 4-0. The losses were demoralizing. Toronto had built a championship-caliber regular season team, but when the playoffs arrived and LeBron stood in their way, they couldn't break through. The pattern became predictable and painful.
In the summer of 2018, Raptors president Masai Ujiri faced a decision. He could run it back with the same core, hoping something would change, or he could make a bold move, sacrifice loyalty for potential championship glory. On July 18, 2018, Ujiri made his choice. The Raptors traded DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and a protected first-round pick to the San Antonio Spurs for Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green. DeRozan found out through social media he was training for Team USA basketball when reports broke about the trade. The player who had pledged loyalty to Toronto, who had turned down bigger contracts elsewhere, who had said he wanted to retire as a Raptor, learned he was leaving through Twitter. His emotional response was immediate and raw. He posted on Instagram about the betrayal, about how he had given everything to Toronto and received this in return. He had conversations with reporters where the pain was evident in every word. He had been promised he wouldn't be traded. Ujiri had looked him in the eye and told him he was safe. The promise had been broken. For Toronto fans, the trade created complicated emotions. Many loved DeMar and felt guilty about the trade. He had been loyal when loyalty was rare. He had embraced Toronto when other stars viewed it as a distant outpost. He had made basketball matter in Canada beyond the Vince Carter era.
But others understood the harsh reality. DeRozan couldn't get past LeBron. The team needed to change something. Kawhi Leonard, despite his mysterious departure from San Antonio, was a championship-level player. If the Raptors wanted to win a title, they needed to make the move, even if it meant breaking their promise to DeMar. The 2018 to 2019 season validated the trade from Toronto's perspective. Kawhi led the Raptors to their first championship, hitting the series-winning shot against Philadelphia and dominating throughout the playoffs. Toronto finally broke through. The gamble worked. But for DeMar, the pain never fully subsided. In interviews, even years later, he talks about the betrayal, about the broken promise, about how trust matters more than money or success. He gave Toronto 9 years of loyalty, and in return, they traded him when a better option became available. The story became another example of the uncomfortable truth about professional sports. Loyalty is valued until it isn't. Promises are kept until keeping them becomes inconvenient. Players are loved until someone better comes along. DeRozan found success in San Antonio, making the All-Star team again and maintaining his high-level play. In 2021, he signed with the Chicago Bulls and had a career resurgence, proving he was still an elite player. But he never forgot Toronto, and Toronto never forgot him.
When DeRozan returns to Toronto now, the reception is warm. Fans cheer for him during video tributes. They acknowledge everything he gave the franchise. But he's wearing a different uniform, playing for a different city, building his legacy somewhere else. The championship banner hangs in Toronto's arena, and Kawhi Leonard's name is permanently part of their history. But so is DeMar DeRozan's. He was the player who stayed when others left. He was the all-star who embraced Canada when bigger markets called. He was the loyal soldier who bled for Toronto. And Toronto repaid that loyalty by trading him the moment a better option emerged. The business won over emotion. Strategy defeated sentiment. And DeMar DeRozan learned what so many players before him have learned. In the NBA, loyalty flows one direction until it doesn't. His statement echoes through basketball conversations. Trust is more important than money. He's right. But in professional sports, trust is often the first casualty when championship windows open and close. Toronto chose to trade trust for a title, and they got what they wanted. But they also lost something irreplaceable, the player who loved them most. James Harden was supposed to be Houston's forever player, the face of the franchise, the MVP who transformed the Rockets into a championship contender. Instead, his departure became one of the messiest breakups in modern NBA history.
Harden arrived in Houston in October of 2012, traded from Oklahoma City after the Thunder refused to pay him. The Rockets gave him the max contract Oklahoma City wouldn't, and Harden rewarded them by becoming a superstar. For 8.5 seasons, Harden was spectacular. He won MVP in 2018, averaging 30.4 points per game. He led the league in scoring 3 times. He made the All-NBA first team 6 times. He transformed Houston's identity around his unique brand of isolation basketball and three-point shooting. The Rockets came close to championship glory. In 2018, they pushed the Golden State Warriors to 7 games in the Western Conference Finals. Leading 3-2, they lost Chris Paul to a hamstring injury in Game 5. Without Paul, they lost Games 6 and 7, missing 27 consecutive three-pointers in Game 7. They were 1 win away from the finals, 1 win away from potentially dethroning Golden State. That was the closest they ever got. In 2019, they lost to the Warriors in the second round. In 2020, they traded Chris Paul for Russell Westbrook, reuniting Harden with his old Thunder teammate. The partnership showed promise initially,
but questions lingered about whether two ball-dominant guards could coexist. Then came the 2020 playoffs in the Orlando bubble. The Rockets lost to the Lakers in the second round, 4-1. After the series, rumors began circulating about Harden's dissatisfaction. Head coach Mike D'Antoni and general manager Daryl Morey both left the organization. The foundation that had built Houston's success was crumbling.
By December of 2020, as training camp for the new season began, tensions boiled over. Harden showed up to camp visibly out of shape. He skipped practices. He made public comments about the organization's direction that left no doubt about his intentions. "This situation is crazy," Harden told reporters on December 15, 2020. "It's something that I don't think can be fixed." The message was clear. Harden wanted out. Not quietly through back-channel trade requests, publicly, loudly, uncomfortably. For several weeks, the situation deteriorated. Harden continued playing for Houston, but clearly didn't want to be there. His effort appeared minimal. His body language screamed discontent. Teammates looked uncomfortable. Coaches tried to maintain professionalism while their star player openly campaigned for a trade. It was disrespectful. It was unprofessional. It was painful to watch for everyone who loved the Rockets. On January 14, 2021, Houston finally completed the trade. Harden was sent to the Brooklyn Nets in a 4-team deal. The Rockets received Victor Oladipo, Dante Exum, Rodions Kurucs, and a massive haul of draft picks, including unprotected first-round picks in 2022, 2024, and 2026, plus pick swaps.
The return was significant, but the manner of departure left Houston fans bitter. Harden had been given everything. The offense was built around his strengths. He was paid handsomely. The organization had traded away assets to surround him with talent. And when things didn't work out, instead of handling it professionally, he quit on the team publicly, showing up out of shape, demanding a trade through the media, playing with visible disinterest. These actions disrespected the organization, his teammates, and the fans who had supported him for 8.5 seasons. Houston's championship window had closed, partly due to circumstances beyond anyone's control. The Warriors were historically great. Chris Paul got injured at the worst possible moment. The basketball gods seemed to conspire against the Rockets at every turn. But Harden's departure made the end feel uglier than it needed to be. He joined Brooklyn and immediately found success, teaming up with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. The super team looked unstoppable on paper, though injuries and drama prevented them from ever fully clicking. Meanwhile, Houston entered a complete rebuild. The team that had been a championship contender for years was suddenly among the worst in the NBA. The transition would have been painful regardless, but Harden's public campaign to leave made it feel like abandonment rather than a mutual parting. For years, Harden had been Houston's identity, his step-back three-pointer, his scoring barrages, his ability to carry the offense night after night. He had given the Rockets relevance, excitement, and genuine championship hope. But when he decided to leave, he did it in the most damaging way possible. Some players leave with grace and gratitude. They thank the city, acknowledge the fans, and move on professionally. Harden left with public complaints, minimal effort, and an attitude that suggested Houston had wronged him rather than the other way around. The irony is that both sides had legitimate grievances. Houston had failed to surround Harden with enough talent to win a championship despite his MVP-level play. Harden had seen the window close and wanted a fresh start. Both perspectives were understandable, but understanding doesn't erase the pain of watching a franchise player quit on the team publicly. It doesn't make the images of an out-of-shape Harden at training camp any less disrespectful. It doesn't heal the wounds caused by public statements about unfixable situations.
James Harden gave Houston 8.5 seasons of brilliant basketball. He came closer to a championship than the Rockets had been in decades. He was the most prolific scorer of his generation, putting up numbers that seemed impossible night after night. But when the time came to leave, he chose the worst possible path, tarnishing his legacy in Houston in ways that can never be fully repaired. Brotherhood. That's what the 2008 Boston Celtics represented. Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Ray Allen came together to form the Big Three, sacrificing individual glory for collective success. They won the championship in 2008, defeating the Lakers in 6 games. They reached the finals again in 2010, losing to the Lakers in 7 games. For 5 seasons, they were brothers, united by a common goal. Then, in the summer of 2012, Ray Allen shattered that brotherhood. Allen's relationship with the Celtics had become complicated during the 2011 to 2012 season. Younger point guard Rajon Rondo was ascending, and tensions between Rondo and Allen were evident. They clashed over style of play, shots, and roles. The chemistry that had made the Big Three special was fraying. During the season, the Celtics explored trade possibilities involving Allen. Though no trade materialized, Allen knew the organization had shopped him. The trust between player and team had been damaged. Additionally, Boston's pursuit of O.J. Mayo in free agency was seen by Allen as the franchise looking for his replacement.
The Celtics reached Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals in 2012 against the Miami Heat. LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh eliminated Boston, ending what everyone assumed would be Ray Allen's final season with the Celtics. He was a free agent, and Boston was expected to re-sign him for one more run at a championship. Instead, on July 6, 2012, Ray Allen signed with the Miami Heat. Not just any team, the team that had just eliminated the Celtics. The team built around LeBron James, the enemy. Allen signed for 3 years and $9.75 million, taking less money than Boston had offered. This wasn't about money or location or opportunity. This was about winning. But it was also about something deeper, something personal. The reaction from Pierce and Garnett was swift and harsh. They felt personally betrayed, not just because Allen left, but because he joined Miami, the rival, the team that had just played in an emotional 7-game series, the team that represented everything they were fighting against. Garnett stopped speaking to Allen completely. For years, he refused to acknowledge him. When asked about Allen in interviews, Garnett's responses were cold and dismissive. The brotherhood was broken, and Garnett made it clear he had no interest in reconciliation.
Pierce was more measured publicly, but equally hurt. The 3 players who had sacrificed and won together were now fractured. Allen had chosen Miami over loyalty to his teammates. For Allen, the decision was complicated. He felt disrespected by the trade discussions. He believed the Celtics were moving on from him regardless. He saw an opportunity to win another championship with a younger, more talented team. From his perspective, the decision made sense, both practically and emotionally. But from Pierce and Garnett's perspective, it was betrayal. You don't join the team that just beat you. You don't take less money to play for your rivals. You don't abandon your brothers for better championship odds. In 2013, Allen's first season with Miami, the Heat reached the finals against the San Antonio Spurs. Game 6 was one of the greatest finals games ever played. With Miami facing elimination, trailing by 5 points with less than 30 seconds remaining, Allen hit a corner three-pointer that saved the Heat's season. Miami won Game 7 and the championship. Allen had his second ring, this time wearing the jersey Pierce and Garnett despised. The image of Allen hitting that shot, celebrating with LeBron and Wade, winning a championship for the team that had eliminated Boston, was painful for Celtics fans and players. It validated Allen's decision basketball-wise, but made the betrayal sting even more.
Years passed, and the wound slowly healed for most people. Allen and Pierce eventually reconciled publicly. They appeared together at events and spoke kindly about each other in interviews, but Garnett remained distant. Even during the Big Three reunion events, the tension between Garnett and Allen was evident. The situation raised difficult questions about loyalty in professional sports. Should Allen have stayed with Boston out of loyalty to teammates, even if he felt the organization had disrespected him? Was joining Miami, of all teams, an unforgivable betrayal? Or did Allen have every right to make the decision that was best for his career and his family, regardless of how it made others feel? There's no clear answer. Both sides have legitimate points. Allen believed he was pushed out and made the best decision available. Pierce and Garnett believed that brotherhood should mean more than opportunities elsewhere, especially with rivals. What's certain is that one of the greatest Big Three combinations in NBA history ended not with mutual respect and understanding, but with broken relationships and hurt feelings. The championship they won together in 2008 couldn't prevent the breakup in 2012. Brotherhood only lasts until someone decides individual goals matter more. Ray Allen made that decision, and Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett never fully forgave him for it. The Big Three died the moment Allen put on a Heat jersey, replaced by memories of what was and could have been if only loyalty had been stronger than opportunity. Anthony Davis was supposed to save basketball in New Orleans. Instead, he became the superstar who wanted out before finishing what he started.
Drafted first overall in 2012, Davis arrived with enormous expectations. New Orleans had lost Chris Paul in a controversial trade veto situation the year before. The franchise needed a new face, a new identity, a reason for fans to care. Davis was supposed to be all of those things. For 7 seasons, he was everything they could have asked for on the court. He made 7 All-Star teams. He led the league in blocks 3 times. He was a generational talent, a 7-footer who could dominate inside and stretch the floor. His combination of size, skill, and athleticism made him one of the most unique players in basketball. But team success remained elusive. The Pelicans made the playoffs twice in Davis's first 6 seasons. In 2015, they were swept in the first round by Golden State. In 2018, they shocked everyone by sweeping the Portland Trail Blazers in the first round, then lost to the Warriors in the second round. That 2018 playoff run felt like a breakthrough. Davis was dominant, averaging 30.1 points and 13.4 rebounds per game. The young core around him showed promise. The future looked brighter than it had in years.
Then, on January 28, 2019, everything changed. Rich Paul, Davis's agent, publicly announced that Davis wanted to be traded, not privately through back channels, but publicly through media reports. Davis had 1.5 years remaining on his contract, but he was done with New Orleans. The timing and method of the announcement infuriated the Pelicans organization. Davis could have handled it quietly after the season. Instead, he chose to do it publicly in January, creating an impossible situation for everyone involved. The Pelicans faced difficult choices. Trade Davis immediately and receive less value because of the timing. Keep him for the rest of the season and risk injury or drama. Try to convince him to stay, even though he had made his intentions clear. They chose to keep him, but limit his minutes. Davis appeared in games, but played reduced time to prevent injury. He had requested the trade, but the organization still controlled when and where he would be moved. The entire situation was uncomfortable for everyone involved. Davis wanted to play more. The Pelicans wanted to protect their asset. Fans didn't know whether to cheer or boo their franchise player. The home crowd's reaction was telling. That's All Folks shirts appeared, featuring Porky Pig from Looney Tunes. It was a mocking farewell to a player who was leaving before delivering a championship. The relationship between Davis and the city had soured completely. Complicating matters were tampering accusations involving the Los Angeles Lakers. Reports suggested LeBron James and the Lakers had been recruiting Davis for months. The NBA investigated and eventually fined Magic Johnson and the Lakers for tampering violations. New Orleans believed that Lakers had orchestrated the entire situation, convincing Davis to demand a trade so he could join LeBron. The trade request dominated the remaining months of the season. Every game featured speculation about Davis's future. Every interview included questions about where he wanted to go. The Pelicans' season was hijacked by Davis's public desire to leave. Finally, on July 6, 2019, after the season ended, the trade was completed. Davis was sent to the Lakers for Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, and multiple first-round draft picks, including number 4 overall in the 2019 draft. The return was significant. Brandon Ingram developed into an all-star. The draft picks provided future assets. But for New Orleans fans, the manner of Davis's departure left permanent scars. He had been given 7 years to build something special. The organization had drafted well around him. They had hired good coaches. They had tried to surround him with talent. And when things didn't work fast enough for his liking, he demanded out publicly, tanking his value and forcing the franchise's hand.
In 2020, Davis won a championship with the Lakers, validating his decision to leave. He got the ring that had eluded him in New Orleans. He achieved his goal of playing alongside LeBron James and competing for titles. But in New Orleans, the relationship never healed. When Davis returns to play against the Pelicans, boos rain down from the crowd. Fans who once cheered for him now view him as a traitor who abandoned them before the job was finished. Davis has tried to explain his reasoning. He wanted to win championships. He didn't believe New Orleans could build a winner around him fast enough. He made a business decision for his career. All of those explanations are reasonable. But to New Orleans fans, none of it erases the public trade demand in January. None of it justifies hijacking an entire season. None of it makes up for 7 years of promise that ended without a championship or even sustained playoff success. The situation illustrated a growing trend in the NBA. Superstars demanding trades publicly, forcing franchises to trade them while destroying their value. Davis wasn't the first, and he certainly wasn't the last, but the method set a precedent that made fans increasingly cynical about player loyalty. New Orleans drafted Davis. They built around him. They gave him every opportunity to succeed. And when he decided it wasn't enough, he demanded out in the most public, damaging way possible. He got his championship with the Lakers, but he left New Orleans with nothing but broken promises and bitter memories.
These stories remind us that basketball is more than just a game. Behind every trade and decision are broken promises, hurt feelings, and changed lives. Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant couldn't share the throne. Kevin Durant chose the team that broke Oklahoma City's heart. LeBron took his talents to South Beach and burned Cleveland in the process. Some wounds heal with time. Cleveland forgave LeBron when he returned and delivered their championship. Others never fully close. Oklahoma City still boos Kevin Durant. San Antonio still wonders what really happened with Kawhi Leonard. The business of basketball doesn't always align with the heart of it. Organizations choose opportunities over loyalty. Players chase rings over relationships. Promises are broken when better options emerge. Isaiah Thomas played through his sister's death, and Boston traded him 4 months later. Dwayne Wade took pay cuts to build championship teams, and Miami hesitated to pay him back. These breakups changed franchises, cities, and the players themselves. Some found greater success elsewhere. Some never recaptured what they lost. All of them learned that in the NBA, nothing lasts forever, no matter how strong the bond feels in the moment.
Even now, fans debate whether these decisions were right or wrong. Was Kevin Durant justified in leaving Oklahoma City after 9 years without a championship? Should Kyrie have stayed in Cleveland after winning it all? Did the Celtics make the right call trading Isaiah Thomas? The arguments continue because there are no easy answers, only difficult choices with lasting consequences. But one thing remains certain. In the NBA, nothing lasts forever. Championships don't guarantee loyalty. Loyalty doesn't guarantee championships. And sometimes, the hardest truth is that even the strongest bonds can break. The court that once felt like home becomes foreign territory. The jersey that once fit perfectly hangs in a different locker room. The fans who once chanted your name boo your return. These are the worst NBA breakups ever. Not because they involved bad players or failed teams, but because they involved real relationships that ended in pain, confusion, and regret. Basketball brings people together, but sometimes, for reasons both understandable and inexplicable, it also tears them apart.